Hi everyone, welcome back to Surakshyaan. Today we'll discuss how does burp suit work. So if you can recall the first time you were introduced about burp suit, you were told that it's simply a proxy that sits between your browser and the server you are communicating with. So for example, let's say you're visiting www.xyz.com. Burp suit will allow you to intercept and make changes to all the requests that are made from your browser to the server and also view the response for different requests. Now, when it comes to HTTP traffic, which means unencrypted traffic, burp suit simply forwards the request and response to and from your browser. But when it comes to HTTPS, which means HTTP over SSL or TLS, forwarding traffic is not the only thing that burp suit does. So let's understand what happens or how does burp suit work over SSL. So we have our target xyz.com and xyz.com decides to get a SSL certificate. So xyz.com goes to a trusted certificate authority. This certificate authority is responsible for issuing SSL certificates. Now this trusted authority could be DigiCert or Let's Encrypt, etc. This trusted authority will first verify the ownership of xyz.com. Once it verifies its ownership, it will generate a SSL certificate which will be signed by this certificate authority's private key. So now what happens is our browser sends a request to xyz.com. xyz.com sends back the digital certificate and its public key. Now remember, this digital certificate is the one issued by Trusted Certificate Authority to xyz.com. Okay. Once our browser receives this digital certificate and public key, it performs two operations. Number one, it verifies that this digital certificate is indeed owned by xyz.com, and number two, it also verifies if this digital certificate has been signed by a trusted certificate authority or not. If both of these checks pass, then a browser generates a symmetric key that is sent to the server and then the encrypted communication starts. Now you might question, how does a browser verify if this digital certificate has been signed by a trusted certificate authority or not? Well, it does that by using something called Trust Store. So every browser that we install, it comes with a set of trusted certificate authorities in which it contains the public key of all these certificate authorities. So for example, if XYZ issued its certificate from DigiCert, there are multiple DigiCert certificates and their respective public keys in our browser. This is what our browser uses in order to verify if the certificate has been signed by a trusted certificate authority or not. Okay. So what happens when it comes to burp? Well, our application or our browser sends a request to xyz.com. Our burp proxy terminates that xyz.com connection and it initiates another connection from its own side. So burp initiates a connection to xyz.com. Now xyz.com sends back a digital certificate and a public key. Now what burp suite does is it creates a different certificate. Okay, it simply copies the certificate of xyz.com and signs it using its own private key and sends it back to the browser. Now since we install, if you remember, every time we need to intercept some traffic, we first install SSL certificate of burp suite into our browser, right? So once our browser receives the forced SSL certificate which is issued by burp, and since burp is already present in our browser, burp's certificate is already present, our browser verifies it, right? And once it is verified, it simply generates a symmetric key, sends to the burp proxy, then burp generates another symmetric key for the connection between burp suite and the server, and that encrypted communication happens. So in this case, there are two symmetric keys. One is for the traffic between your browser and burp proxy, and second is for your burp proxy and your server. So in a way, server sends a request to burp proxy, burp generates a forged certificate signed by its own private key, and then it sends it back to the browser. And since we have already installed burp's certificate in our browser, the browser trusts anything that is signed by burp, and the communication is initiated, and we can basically read all the HTTPS traffic. Now let's see what it looks like. So here I have an instance of burp suite on the left and a browser on the right. So if I go to burp settings and under TLS, there is a section called server TLS certificates. This section will list all the domains for which our burp suite has forged certificates. So if I go to hackthebox.com, we can see this section is populated by all the domains for which burp suite has forged certificates. So if you go to a browser, click on this, click on certificate details, we can see that the organization for this certificate is Portswigger, which shows that this certificate has been signed by burp suite.